So I'm going to switch back to my good old trusty Dole DeWatt. Dole DeWatt. Dole DeWalt. Say that 10 times fast. Dole DeWalt. 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 Sure, now I don't mess it up. Right into the lens. Nice little nick right into the lens. I'm really trying to break this camera. As I slice my finger open. Ouch. Sharp edges. All right, Fearless Mods fans, it is another day in the garage, and we are back to work on the 2019 Kia Stinger GTS for part 2. Birds are chirping, cool temperatures, perfect for working. Let's get back to this fender. Last time, we took apart the fender, we drilled out all the spot welds, and we got ourselves situated to start looking at the new piece of structure that we got to drill out and get ready to put on here. We've got a lot of other things we can do too. We got our strut in, so we got to get that strut replaced. I've got some materials so that I can make a measuring bar so we can take measurements across all the points here and make sure that we're nice and square and to spec. It's going to be a lot of work. I'm not sure if we'll get it all done in one episode, but we're going to go ahead and give it a shot. So, most importantly, I got new drill bits. All right, so this Milwaukee drill bit was cutting like a champ when I first started, but I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holes in, and I'm not making very good progress on this 8th hole. So I'm gonna switch back to my good old trusty Dole DeWalt and see how that works, because this thing isn't doing crap anymore. There you go, the Dole DeWalt got on through it. Thank you, Milwaukee, for nothing. So yes, it's a new day here in the garage. Ran out of arm strength drilling all these holes, but I was going at it a lot slower with the drill bits so that I wouldn't overheat them, and the 5/16 one was able to do a little bit better of a job. Those last 6 right there were kind of hard to get to up in that angled area, but I've gotten through them now with a combination of different drill bits, and so now it's time to try to start peeling all this apart, and that's not going to be fun or easy because I don't want to damage any of this metal that's here, the good stuff, and while these are drilled out, you never do quite get all of the spot weld on all of them. So if I have too much trouble, I may have to come back in there with a 3/8 bit just to kind of get the top layer a little bit better of a release from any of the surrounding parts of the spot weld that I might have missed because I wasn't perfectly center punched on them. Or a lot of times they might do a double up spot weld where the spot welder moves a little and it creates more of an oval shape and you miss some of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and start trying to pop this thing apart, and let's see how it goes. And there it is. We've got the entire piece out. This is exactly as we need it. Perfect and straight. Places to weld. And so now let's stick it in here and see how it works out. Looks like we might have a couple little things to straighten. But overall, one nice piece. Completely straight, ready to go in there and just pretty much weld the perimeter, and it'll be good. A couple of these will be a little challenging to get to. It's mostly these right here, but I think I'll be able to get up in there with the MIG from behind here and get those no problem. And it should be as good structurally as it was from the factory. All right. That is looking good. I'm super pleased with this. There's a lot to do here to improve the fitment and make this go in there. Obviously, we got some pieces here that are overlapping that aren't quite set in there right. So, wow, this is huge progress. I'm super stoked. We only had this little bit of bending on this corner tab here from the structure that remains with the car, and you can see how well this fits in here. So, super stoked that this is the only structural damage really that we had to the front end. It's just incredible. Once I clean up all the seam sealer and the spot welds, I'll be able to get in there and get this to slide over here a little bit better and into shape and get everything flush, clamped down, prepped, primed, and welded. And then we will have our front end back ready to put together. The first step will be, before welding, will be to replace the strut, roll it back and forth, get it set and level, so that we can then take our measurements across there, make sure everything's square before we actually permanently weld this into place. So why don't we go ahead and pull all this stuff back off of here and go ahead and start cleaning up some of that surface and getting that strut swapped out. So even though this frame rail is not bent, from an overall straightness perspective, the action of this getting smashed around here and this bracket being here did kind of push it in the outer wall just a little bit, kind of like the hinge on the door. So the way I'm going to go ahead and just try to level this out a little bit is with the stud welder, and go ahead and come along here and down here and just kind of give it some tugs to bring it out a little bit flatter, to make this surface work out just a little bit better. All right, that's not doing crap. So we left off with this bent strut and getting it out of here. I think I ran out of some video and some battery, and so you missed a little bit of this, but we did get the strut out. Now it's time to go ahead and get it off of this, to get all of this off of here. I'm able to use one of my Allen wrenches here at 5/16 to be able to get in there and hold that if I need to. Problem is you can't get in there with a wrench onto the nut very well. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and compress the spring and make sure that we got that safety catch in place, and then we will get to removing this nut and pulling this apart.
This thing takes off because
so if you look in the cup, you can see right here where the piston actually got against, when it yanked back, it actually got against that inner wall just a little bit and put a little bit of a dent in it really, but it didn't crack anything. Nothing appears bent, and that area clears the shaft anyways. You can see how much it was tweaked back to be able to hit that. You can see a little bit of a mark right here where the corresponding impact point right here. So that part doesn't appear to be bent. Of course, everything else is big time. And that's just a little investigative work to make sure we're good to go with putting this cap back on. I see no reasons not to. Everything else looks good with it, so let's put it back together. Okay, this is scary shit, and I am not a fan of this. I had to put it in the vise because as I kept ratcheting one side of this down, it would slide around and then the spring would get crooked. So I've got it clamped down pretty good. I got the nut started here. I'm gonna try to impact it on a little ways and see what we can do. Scary shit. We got her put together. Took some time, took a better impact, took a vise, took about 5 or 6 tries, but we got it. Got this big heavy monstrosity here laying over on me and on this jack, and it keeps trying to roll off of it and yank on this cord, which isn't cool, so let's make it heavier. See if we can do that. So there's a little notch right here, goes right here in this notch. Hopefully it slides in easier than it came out. And let's put a little wedge into it. That is now held up there, so that's good. I put the nuts on and I double checked that the arrows on the cap are pointing towards the front of the car, front center of the car. Verified the other side that that's the same way they're going, just to make sure we hadn't messed anything up, and it looks good to go. So let's see if we can get some of this suspension on here and then start putting things back together. That was a job, and that was just to get this baby going straight. I think it's going to look a lot better. Okay, so we got the truck backed in here, we got a piece of chain on here, and we got our eye bolt in here with some washers on the back of it. And the point here is we're just going to do that, to put it under tension, and then kind of massage some of this here. And by massage, I mean hammer. When we let this out, hopefully, we have a little straighter surface there. Okay, so at this point we've got everything in here. It's not welded in by any means, but it's starting to feel pretty solid, getting everything lined up. Trying to get this in here where all my seams are closed up. Rolled it back and forth a couple times to help it settle on the suspension. And then we're going to be about ready after I help a couple things along here. To go ahead and start taking our measurements. This is the sheet that has all the measurements that we need to use to locate everything and make sure that we are all lined up perfectly. First thing I want to do is go ahead and get a couple measurements and see how close we are. Once I know how close we are, I can then go ahead and pull this off, clean everything up, get the weld through primer on there, and then put it back together and get ready to start putting in some welds in these spot weld holes. Let's build a quick little bar for taking measurements. So now we have the hot sliders that will slide across this longer pole here. This end and this end, adjustable. Slide it on, clamp it down. All right guys, catching you up here. We've got this piece in and it's looking good. Couple things tweaked on it that I'm going to want to tweak back. And I think that's just a result of shipping. First thing I'm going to do now that we've got our tool built for taking the measurements is I'm going to go ahead and take off the door and fender on the other side so that we can get to some of those points that we need to measure across, and then we're going to go through and measure all of these and see where we stack out. All right, that was not easy. There's one bolt back there that is quite a challenge. Actually, there were about 3 challenging bolts, but we got it. So we've got the fender off, we've got the door loose, so we can take it off later to make sure we get this lower door hinge straightening and door jamb looking the same. But now we can take all of our measurements across here with the measuring tool and also see where these tabs need to be positioned so we can straighten everything up on that side that doesn't come along with it. So we got some brackets off of here. And then got the other ones off of the new piece so that we can put these in place. That'll be the first thing we weld so that we can start getting measurements from there. Also straighten up all the brackets along the door, top, middle, bottom. Everything's looking good and straight. We're gonna go with some weld through primer here and get the backs of these and the surface here, and then we'll go ahead and start welding in these tabs. First 5 welds done, and we look good. So now it's gonna be time to go ahead and start taking some measurements and see where we fall on all the rest of this. I think before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and get in here and clean this up and prime it so it's ready to go once we get there. Okay, we've got the paint ground away everywhere where we're going to be welding through, and then we've covered it with the copper primer, so that, or the weldable primer, which is copper, so that we can weld through and get good bonds. All the holes have been cleaned up, gone all the way around the whole thing. I think we're ready to start clamping this thing together and getting some measurements and start tacking it in place. Oh shit, I got a lot of holes I gotta drill on here for all my spot welds. 22, 24, 25 more holes. 25 more holes. 25 more holes. So we've got the 25 holes drilled out right here so we can put our spout welds in. A little bit of alignment still needing to occur with the bolt holes, but although these are going in just fine. What I'm doing first is just going ahead and getting this mounted to the inner frame. So this is where I'm going to have to go in here and weld these. I want to do them from the inside here. Got 6 spots here, one's covered up, but those 6 spots right there, I'm just going to weld them from the inside here. I think this looks pretty good. If you look in here, we've got a lot of light, but we've got good penetration on all 6 of those spots where the spot welds were. And if you look on this side, you can see up here the where the heat came through, indicating that we got good penetration to the faceplate. So now we will go ahead and start working to get all of our measurements exactly where we want them, and we can start tacking everything else in place. All right, let's talk about what we got here. The measurements on here that I showed you, those are all in millimeters. So I had to convert. The tool worked like a charm. I was able to get around there and take all the measurements I needed to. Everything is looking really good. The worst that we have is about 8 millimeters off. And using that calculator, 8 millimeters is 0.3 inch, right? So that's not insignificant. However, those areas all have to do with things that I tweaked on here to adjust the fender, which means I can continue to tweak them a little bit to adjust it where I need to. Fender bolt to fender bolt right here ends up being dead on, whereas the front here ends up being just a slight bit wide. But this, to me, appears to be just a little bit tweaked, and I think I'll be able to just kind of pull it in where I need to, and then adjust this back kind of to where it needs to be, because you can see how it's rocking right here. Maybe you can't, I can. So that's gonna be pretty good. Everything else, all the crisscrosses and everything, the worst again is 8 millimeters. We've got some 6s, we got some 4s, we got some 5s, we got a 7. Everything is within 4 to 8 millimeters of where it should be. Everything along this side here, measuring from front to back, is 1 millimeter, 4 millimeters, 1 millimeter, 3 millimeters, 1 millimeter of being accurate distance-wise front and back here, which tells me I've got this set back in there the right distance it needs to be. It's clamped in, everything looks good. I am ready to go ahead and start welding this thing, and any adjustments from here are going to come from just tweaking the brackets and things like that as we go back to assembly. The welding is done. There's a lot of cleanup work that still needs to happen so that I can make them look pretty, and then get the seam sealer on there, and then we'll be ready to go in with paint. Whenever we do the doors and the underside of the hood and everything else, we'll hit this with a little bit of paint so that it looks good. But that thing's in there. It's not going anywhere. And so I don't know, I think we've got enough for an episode here, and I am beat. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one and say once again, thanks for coming here. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and we will catch you again real soon to finish this. So take care.